Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of the Winning in Professional Services podcast. My name is Matteo. I'm joined today by my co-host, Scott. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing well, Matteo. How about yourself?
Doing well as well. Excited for today's episode. We hinted a little bit about this in probably a few episodes before. And today we're going to be talking about why we believe professional service firms, companies should talk about prices on their websites. The reason we are talking about this is because we both have quite a bit of experience working with professional service companies. And I can talk for myself. I would love to hear from you, Scott, but I have definitely seen a lot of professional service companies' websites without prices. Several times, not even ranges of prices. And I think given the modern and economic environment that we live in today, with the abundance of information that buyers have when it comes to researching services or products, but in the case of professional service companies, we're talking about services here, they can find basically everything about a service except for how much the service costs. And I think it would be fantastic if, based on this initial observation, also the price could be, displayed or discussed at least on the website in a way or another. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Scott.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an episode where we're going to agree a lot, Matteo. I think we'll probably get into the tactics of how to do it, or maybe why companies have reservations to do this, how we can get around those challenges. But certainly at the surface level, when we just talk about should you be showing your prices on your website, I am in full agreement with you, Matteo. I do believe you should, and I almost can't even think of an exception of when you shouldn't. And I think there are plenty of reasons why companies don't do it, and I understand the hesitation. But to your point, people are trying to make educated guesses. People are trying to essentially use a website or other material as that first salesperson. And the last thing they want to do is have to, when they get so used to doing the research online, to then have to talk to a salesperson as part of that process just to determine whether or not you're even in the running of a company they would work with. It's like, well, they're just going to move on to the next site. They're going to be like, crap, I don't want to talk to a salesperson. They're going to move right on. So I think it's so important to show your prices, even if you think you shouldn't, and even if you have 10 reasons why you shouldn't. I think you should. So
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of companies think that their services are so unique from everyone else's that they can't put their prices on their website. But the reality is that the majority of prospects that are searching for services have oftentimes very similar questions they need answers to before buying anything. And in my mind, maybe the only real case where you wouldn't want to put a price or an exact price is if your service isn't standardized enough, where there's a lot of customization going on. But even in that case, I would argue that a starting price could be valuable, or a wide range could be even more valuable. The unfortunate part maybe about ranges is that if you say my service starts at $5,000, it could go up to 10 or 15,000. The problem is that you're anchoring your lowest price to the prospect's mind, and for them they probably think, oh, okay, $5,000 rather than $15,000. So even those cases, try to be maybe a little bit careful when you decide which type of ranges to use on your website. Maybe the other thing that comes to mind is that, like, if you like sales rather than marketing, maybe then don't put the price on your website, which means all the time you have to sort of sell a service, you are going to be having a sales call with someone. I would argue that for professional service companies anyway, you would want to speak to prospective clients all the time. But what I'm saying here is that having your price on your website does a lot of, it removes a lot of potential questions from the prospect's mind before they even consider reaching out to you. They self identify themselves whether part or not of the price range that you're displaying on your website. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Oh, sorry, continue.
No, go ahead, Scott.
Well, I just one of the points that you made about anchoring, right? So just something hit my mind. Let's say that you're offer something between $5,000 and $15,000. Let's say it is that, right? And you said the worry there is that, or concern could be, now you're anchored around 5, and everyone kind of hopes they're on the 5 side of that range. A simple way to potentially help overcome that and anchor to a better price point would be to say we're typically around $10,000 plus or minus 20%, right? Or plus or minus 50%, depending on the specifications. That way, at least with anchoring, right, it doesn't matter that you're actually saying, like, you can do the calculation, but what's the thing they're anchored on? In that case, now they're anchored on $10,000. And that's a better price to be anchored on, then that would be a way to do it versus having that full range. So there's creative ways that you get around it, but yeah, in any case, like you said, having people self-select or basically say, I can't afford this company, I'd say that's for the better. If they can't afford you, why are you wasting their time, or why are they wasting your time on a sales call if they have no way to afford your services? And I want to get your thought on this too. Maybe this was part of another topic, but I can imagine in my ear right now someone saying, "Yeah, but we focus on value, not price, not cost." And I know you and I are both value-based guys as well, and I don't think that means that you can't show price. So you can play off value, but you can't just say, "Oh, I don't show prices because I want to convince my clients on the phone. I want to convince my prospects on the phone how valuable we are." It's like, I would argue you can do that in other ways. You can do that on your website. You can do that on your content marketing game. You can do that on other places. You can demonstrate your value in other ways. Mm-hmm. So we are not saying that you need to compete on price.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I don't think you need to even itemize, break down your service price at an item level and just say, okay, this is how much we're paying our sort of experts to work on your service delivery every month and everything like that. But like you said, I think value can also come from the results that you have generated for other clients in the past. And so if you've been able to generate a certain type of ROI to previous clients based on the price that you have charged them, that automatically could mean that you are able to charge higher prices because you're able to almost guarantee the result to every client you work with. And so the cost of the service doesn't necessarily equate to the value of the service, right? And sometimes when I come across websites that don't show prices, it almost makes me wonder, like, if I go at a mall and I see a shop without prices displayed at their windows, I almost assume that it's above my price range, and I automatically opt out from even entering the shop sometimes. I just don't think it's something I can afford, and I just want to find something that I can afford. So I think at the end of the day, there's more benefits of actually showing the price than not showing it. The risk is that you could potentially, some prospects could visit your website, potentially could afford your service, but because you haven't shown the price on your website, they don't even want to consider scheduling a call with you. Why should they consider scheduling a call if they don't even know whether that call is worth their time, right? So I think there's, again, like you said, probably we're going to be agreeing a lot, but I still see a lot of websites not showing prices, and I think this is a worthy topic to discuss. What's your sort of experience with, the type of arguments clients or professional service companies you've worked with in the past about not wanting to show their prices on their websites?
Yeah, the first one is just going to be, we're different. You don't understand. It's complex how we have to create a price proposal, and this is how we do it, and right? So there's just one is too complicated, and another one is honestly, I think so much of it is fear. So it's, that our competitors would know our prices. Other times it's our competitors aren't showing their prices, therefore why should we, right? Um, there's just, I think it comes down to confidence. I almost feel like if you're not willing to show your price, it's like you're just showing that you're not confident enough to show your price. So what's your hesitation to show your price? Are you scared because you think it will come off too high? Are you scared because you think it'll scare people away? Are you not like, so I think there's just something in there that's preventing people from taking what seems to be a risk there and divulging more. Whereas I think that if your competitors aren't showing your prices, or aren't showing their prices, then that's the more reason for you to show your price, right? Because you're going to win that game. If you are the one that is divulging the price and saying, this is our price, this is why, by the way, we're not the cheapest, all these other things, well, now you might be scaring some people away, but some people are going to be like, well, I like how you do business. You're very honest. You're very transparent. These other guys didn't show their price, and they kind of scared me with Sticker Shop when they eventually did share it. So you just being the most honest, open business in your area, it's a differentiator, right? It's a huge win if your competitors aren't showing their price. It's only the more reason to do it.
Big win, yeah. I have a personal anecdote. My parents are in the process of moving house, and they've been looking for a relocation company. And every website they have found of local relocation companies in Switzerland where they live, none of them shows prices. None of them has a calculator. I do understand that moving companies have variable costs. It's not just a fixed price per service, depending on how many, rooms your apartment or house has, how much furniture you need to move, and all that type of stuff. But I think there's still ways to provide a range for a price. And eventually, they came across a company that was able to provide them with a calculator on their website, the only one. Unfortunately, the calculator didn't automatically spit out a number. They had to fill out a form, and after the form, they didn't get the price at that time either. So eventually, somebody called them up and told them how much it was. But I really think there's lots of opportunities for local businesses to stand out and be, the transparent, accounting firm, the transparent IT management company, the transparent law firm, or anything that we can think about can be, a differentiating factor, like you said. It's really, and I think even the fact that a lot of companies potentially think that, we don't want to show our prices because we don't want our competitors to see how much we charge. To me, it's not even a valid argument, because it's not all that difficult to find out how much you are charging, even if you're not showing the prices on your website. I can do a mystery shopping exercise and find it out in half an hour, and that's about it. So I really don't think I don't think it's necessary to be so afraid of showing prices. It's just going to help probably with the sales process a bit more.
I've just because your anecdote in that example of the moving company, something struck me as like a potential way that you could do this. If I was a moving company, how I might do it, right? So the way I'm thinking about is that you want a calculator. I would argue, so you might want to have it be required email address or something. I get that. I'm always back and forth on whether or not that makes sense to do. But let's say that you get a calculation right after you enter your email address and you get it emailed to you right away, right? Mm-hmm. That's a decent way to do it, right? So you know the email address is going to be real. Yeah, you can follow up. It's going to be a little bit annoying to the mystery shopper or whatever else to get it if they know they have to enter a real email address, but you're able to do it that way. The other thing that hits me, though, is add-ons, right? So let's say that this is something that you can buy right away. In the moving company, maybe you can actually buy it right away. Maybe you say, okay, now I'm going to pick a date in the next step, right? If you do that, you can still use the add-ons, right? So you want to have the price be relative to your family is going to say, oh, that's a pretty good price. That's a decent price, right? So let's say the moving price is X, right? And they can calculate it. They can say, well, that's in my range. I'll just go for it because this is a company that's being transparent with me and it's telling me these things. It's a good deal. Click next. Now you're essentially just like at a supermarket. You're paying for your food now, right? and you've already committed to the food that's on the thing. And then, as you know, as everyone knows, it's a little bit easier to pick up that little gum piece during that sales process. So they've already committed to saying it's a pretty good deal. You can still use, just like any e-commerce store does, the add-ons. Now, you don't want to be like a airline where everything is an add-on, but there might be something in that moving company that says, hey, would you like us to bring extra boxes or have an extra person there so it goes fast or whatever else? If you sign up for that now, it'll be 50% lower than it would be if you did it on site, and just an extra $100, just an extra $200, whatever else. That's a way. You want the price to be able to get them in the door. You want to have upsell opportunities. You don't want them to feel taken advantage of, like you surprise them with the very basic thing that you'd expect in the deal. But I'm just saying, you have them where you want them when they're checking out with you. And so I think still in the end, it would be a good process for an end customer to do it that way.
I agree. Okay, moving on. I think we've definitely spoken a lot already about why we think professional service companies should have prices. Definitely builds trust and transparency. It qualifies leads. I think personally it makes the sales process easier, because if you are not showing your price and then you eventually are able to get on a phone call with your prospect, and remember you haven't shown your price on your website, but then you're now on a sales call and you're trying to hunt for a budget, right? Because you kind of want to know how much your prospect has to spend. And they say, I don't have a budget. Well, now you're basically just making the whole conversation about price. You have no chance of positioning yourself as a value provider. You're mostly just trying to get the highest price from the prospect, and the prospect is just trying to get the lowest price from you. And that's a bad situation potentially to be in during a sales conversation with prospects. Have you experienced any of this yourself, Scott, or seen these happen at all?
Yeah, I think I've experienced some clients that I work with have this issue where there's not enough of a qualification process to talking. Like, let's say that it's an owner-led business that's like the head salesperson, right? Or something like this. Well, then now there's a worry that you're going to be talking to a prospect that's not in any way qualified. And then there can be a hesitation to allow people to book calls right away or other things, and you're putting barriers in front of people. And just because you're trying to qualify them in order to spend the valuable time of the owner or of the sole salesperson, whatever it is, right? And so I've seen that happen. And to your point, I think that this is a good step, because guess what? Someone who's filling out a price calculator has at least seen your prices, it's guaranteed they've at least seen the general price range, right? Now they're qualified enough to probably talk to that more senior salesperson or that founder salesperson. So I think it's a good lead qualification process.
Getting a little bit more practical in terms of how can professional service company actually talk about prices on their websites. What are your recommendations, or one of the simplest thing you think a professional service company could start doing when it comes to, addressing pricing and costs related to their services?
A simple one would be writing an article on your website or a blog post that says, how much does X cost, or how much does X cost in Y area, whatever it is, right? So if you could do that, then you can do a very thorough guide that talks about the things that impact price, what brings some companies up cheaper than others. Potentially you bring up some of your competitors that are cheaper, and I don't know, but you could just have a thorough guide. And the reason I like that is because it can also help you with traffic to your website. So if you're remember, leverage the fact that you're going to be the open one about pricing. If a lot of other people aren't talking about pricing and you're the only company out there in your region that is sharing pricing, then that detailed guide is likely to get search traffic to it, right? And so I'd say, create a very thorough guide, give the in-depth view about how you think about pricing, the different ranges of pricing, the different competitors and the different ranges of those. Do that, and then maybe direct them to a price calculator on your website, right? So I think the blog article along with a price calculator would be a couple things that hit me. What about you, Matteo? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would say articles or videos could be highly valuable. I think generally for a higher value service, maybe a video could also be another additional trust factor when they see the owner or the CFO talking about prices in front of a camera. I think that would be probably something I would consider doing, and it would just probably be the same content that you have written for the article in just a different format, and use that on your service pages. And maybe even on the service pages, you might want to have a few FAQs at the bottom of the page addressing certain pricing questions. Another idea, and I think we touched on a little bit about this before, is using or writing about the costs that influence the final price of the service. Do you have a certain cost related to infrastructure? Do you have certain costs related to tools and software that you use to deliver the service? I think those are valuable things that oftentimes are hidden behind closed walls. People don't know those things exist, but that actually are factors that influence the final price of anything we buy. And I think being transparent about those could be helpful for a prospect, for a buyer, to have a better idea about why a certain service costs a certain amount. And this again doesn't necessarily mean that you need to just charge at cost. Obviously, we want to charge based on value. So how do we actually price our services based on value? I think one way could be through the use of testimonials, maybe having case studies that demonstrate the ROI of the investment other previous clients had made with your firm, and the results that they had gotten from the services that you have delivered to them at the price that you've charged them for.
Yeah. And one other thing that hits me, Matteo, is I think it's good to know where you fall in the market, right? So I often use the example of like an automaker. So you could say that there are Mercedes and BMWs and whatever, right? And that's a certain tier. And then there's like the Hondas, Toyotas, it's a certain tier. And then there's I'm not going to name lower end brands or newer coming brands. But I think a lot of professional services companies want to come across as the Honda, right? And some might want to come across as the Lexus or Ferrari. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the point is that if you know where you stand in the market, okay, I'm going for like pretty middle of the road, budget conscious. They want a good thing. They want something that's reliable. They don't want to show off, right? If that's your market, and to be truthful, I think that is the market for a lot of professional services. They want to kind of sit there in the middle. Then you can say, what is, to your point, what's required in order to get that? Okay, we do these. This is how we manage the data. This is how we make sure that everything we talk with you about is confidential. This is how we manage the technology. This is how, right? If you're explaining what it takes to make the Honda car, then you can then draw and say, if anyone's offering less than our price range, these are the areas that they're probably cutting the corners. And you don't have to speak bad about them, right? But what you're saying is just realistically, there's some other competitors in our area. There are some that are going to undercut us by 20 or 30%. They have to do that somewhere. And so they're very likely not doing A, B, C, or D. Talk to them about those things. We recommend asking these questions during the process just to check. And again, that's where education comes in, right? Saying, if people are having these pricing discussions, it is a good time, maybe in that article or on that page of your site, to start saying, when you're checking the prices of XYZ companies, consider asking them A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? And then that's now something that's on their mind. If chances are they go to the cheaper competitor that is 30% less expensive, and they're not doing that, and that, or they're kind of fumbling along to answer those questions and trying to avoid them, right? So now you set yourself up to, now that person comes back to your company and says, ooh, actually, that is a pretty good deal. So that's just one idea of how you can position yourself as that middle range company.
Yeah, I like it. And I actually would work also by trying to explain why your services are not as expensive as the higher tier companies. What are the things that you don't do that the higher tier companies do? And that really helps paint a very clear picture of where you're standing in the market compared to some of the competitors that you that you have around. I think another interesting way to talk about prices or to show what are the different pricing options that a prospect has when they consider working with you maybe could be to develop 3 to 5 different pricing scenarios based on previous clients and the most common type of project types that you've worked with those clients in the past, so that you can essentially, you already have an ideal client profile in a way, and you know what the size of the average client that comes to you is and what type of services that they buy from you are, and just develop those pricing scenarios so that if a certain client with similar characteristics come by, they can see themselves in those scenarios and essentially understand, okay, this company, maybe not exactly in my industry, but similar size, similar revenue, they're paying this much for this type of service. I think this helps a lot, basically demonstrating for, without much of a calculator, or you don't have to develop any technology, just write out what essentially other companies are paying for the same services that eventually other similar companies would want to buy from you.
Oh, I love that, Matteo. It does also now remind me of, like in those scenarios, right? You could be positioning yourself as, this is how we service this type of company that's looking around this budget. This is how we service that company. And it makes me think that if you offer a good, better, best type model of your own pricing, then potentially you can serve those different, gaps in different ways of different needs, and people don't need to look outside of your company for those things, right? And so, in any case, they come to you because you're being honest about pricing. You then explain the most common pricing, but then you then explain that, for some people who don't need that, we have this kind of light version. Or some people that want more, we have this other version. Well, now they don't have to go searching for websites for different price ranges, right? Now you've given them 3 price ranges, and they might fit in the middle, they might fit in the top, they might fit on the bottom, but either way, they're still your customer. So good, better, best is a helpful way to compete against yourself, and you win no matter what.
I like it, yes. All right, I think we've riffed for a while, and I think we've pretty much gave all of our reasons why we think professional service companies should display prices on their websites. Scott, do you have any other thoughts about this particular topic, or anything you want to address we haven't addressed?
Yeah, just to remember that you're not all that different, right? What I mean by that is that I think it's easy to say, yes, but I can't do that because of this, or yes, but my industry is unique in this way. And maybe you're the one case like that, but I think it often comes down to reservations or fear or some of these other things. It becomes an excuse, right? And so I'd be wary of making excuses. Be careful that you're not making an excuse and say why you can't do the thing that seems scary to you. And instead think, well, guess what? Pretty much any company in the world in any different professional services industry has managed to find a way to do pricing. The question is, are you going to be one of the innovators that's going to do that and be the transparent one, or are you going to be the one that's going to make an excuse as to why you can't? And so that's my kind of parting words, is that don't make the excuses. Talk to someone about it. Potentially it's booking a meeting with Matteo or myself, and we could probably talk to you a little bit about your pricing. I'd be happy to riff with the company about that stuff as well. Anyone that's going to push you over the edge of not making excuses would be a win.
Awesome. Yes, thanks so much, Scott. And thank you everyone for tuning in for this episode. Feel free to leave comments in the YouTube comment section of the video, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, feel free to visit our YouTube channel and leave comments over there. We'll be happy to answer them. And if you have any suggestions for future episodes, please let us know as well, and we'll make sure to cover them for sure in the future. Thanks so much. See you next time.